Hello, Allison.
Good morning.
Good morning. Right back to you. As we move into the second half of the month of May.
Wild. It's
Yeah,
really flying by. I mean, I think that's a good thing. I think that hopefully means that we're all nice and busy.
yeah. Well, hey, the weather is certainly consistently turning for the better, so I'm happy about that.
Yes, me
Yeah.
too. Maybe we'll do an episode outside one of these days.
Yes, we should. We should. So, for all of you who have tuned in today, either live or if you just happen to watch this on demand, you are here with us in this episode of Leave It to the Experts. And with me today is my lovely co host, Allison. So here we are. For those of you who may be watching today's episode for the first time, I invite you, I welcome you to reach out to either Allison or myself if you know someone who is an expert in their subject matter that we should consider bringing them on as a special guest in an upcoming episode. So, all of that said, right now, let's talk about the person. Uh, let's talk about the person who I asked to join us today. And I'm going to lead off with a couple of attributes about him. Just a few. Why? Because for all of you watching today, I want you to add in your comments for the attributes that maybe I did not include. So here goes. Our special guest today is Austin McCulloh. And a few attributes I would describe him after I met him several years ago is he's engaging. He certainly is driven. You'll feel that. And the third attribute I'm going to drop is he is very emotionally aware, very self
Mm,
aware.
hmm
So, having said that, let's bring him into the studio.
All right.
Awesome.
Austin, good
Awesome. I,
morning.
I I have to first say thank you for the kind words. Those are some great attributes, so I appreciate them a lot. Thank you.
Well, they're true, right? They are true.
I'd like to say so. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And as the old cliche goes, perception is reality. My perception of
hmm
you is my reality, and hopefully others will feel the same way.
I hope so too. I hope so too.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing your time with us. I know you're a busy guy. Let's just lead right into our conversation today in this episode of Leave It to the Experts. So, first question, putting you right into the hot seat, Austin.
right
That's it.
off
Share
the
with us,
bat.
yeah, share with us your why of all of the things that you've done, the business that you created, you grew, and you recently sold, and of course, your next adventure. What was your why? What is your why?
How honest do you want me to be? Completely.
Completely
Extremely.
honest.
I like asking that question. I know some people have mixed feelings about it, but ironically, I was having this conversation with a friend yesterday who actually was a client of the previous business that I sold. And I got into entrepreneurship selfishly. Like my why at the time when I got into entrepreneurship, I was about, I don't know, 21 years old. It was just to make money. It wasn't about making an impact. It wasn't about anything like that. But as I was talking with this individual yesterday, I said the reason why the business became sellable is because there was an actual impact that I wanted to make on other people. And for anybody who doesn't know anything about the past business, Lead Goals Accelerator, what we did is we did marketing / lead generation for different financial advisors, right?
Mhm.
And the why behind that is I was in the field before and I saw how many financial advisors, different financial representatives, they just churned out of the industry because a lot of the industry just, I bet you both know this, but
Yes.
they preach just to get referrals from your friends and family and constantly be on top of them.
hmm
And I hated that. When I
Yeah.
was in the industry, I didn't grow up with a wealthy family. And so when I was reaching out to my parents, uncles, aunts, cousins, whatever, a lot of people were blowing me off, not just because of that, but because I was also young. And it just didn't sit right with me. So I figured that there was a different way. Bill, actually, when we met a few years ago, was when I started to pick up on more online prospecting, LinkedIn prospecting in particular.
Right.
And I just realized that it lowered the barrier to entry. So I was like, why not show people how they can get it done, even if they don't come from a very wealthy family? You know what I mean?
Right on, right on. Well said. Good story.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you walked in their shoes
Yep.
to give them a roadmap, a set of recipes as to how they can achieve more. You started that with a lot of credibility. So
it sure
right.
helped. It really did help. And actually, one thing, if I could plug in there before you get into other questions, it's funny because in the financial services industry, compliance is a big topic. And that's why having that relevant subject matter expertise helps a lot, is because that was one of the most common objections we got, was not, does what you do work? Does your service work? But is it compliant? Right. So it's interesting knowing those granular details when going into something.
Yeah. Meaning being compliant, you got to stay within the guardrails of doing business the right way, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and good for you for recognizing right off the bat too that Bill and I do experience this all the time. You can only beat up your sphere of influence so much before the well runs dry. And also good for you for recognizing early on that someone may be a rock star financial advisor, a rock star lender, a rock star realtor. That doesn't mean that they have an inherent set of sales skills or the tools in their toolbox. And I know that scares a lot of people away from the professions we're talking about.
And we'll even get into that later today, because you're completely right. Like, why does somebody need to be an amazing salesperson and a financial advisor? They're two completely different skill sets. It's insane.
Yeah. With the business that you created, you built and recently sold, and with this new venture, can you speak to us then, as far as the financial advisor community is concerned? Is your impact bigger for the independent, non-captive advisors, or it doesn't matter?
That's a really good question, because it's helpful to each area, whether independent or captive. It just depends on how. The reason why I would say that is, this might hurt some feelings, but I typically think those who go independent are typically more driven and committed to the business. That's why they often go out on their own, versus captive. They just kind of fall into it. Sure. You have people who, some are on this side, some are on that side. I get it. But with the captive, then sometimes they're just being preached, go do this. This is the only way you should sell and market yourself. So they don't even think about the other options that they have. So they need more creativity, right? On the independent side, they already have enough creativity, but sometimes they're trying too many things where they don't know what they should be doing, what's best. They don't have a focus per se. And so I would say it's beneficial to both, if that answers the question, Bill.
Yeah, it does. It does. And going forward, I think any business owner, yourself included, it's always about branding you and your why. And if it just happens to be that you need to brand yourself, you financial advisor, that's an independent one, or you financial advisor, that's a captive one under a big brand, it's still important.
True. Yeah. And actually, I'm sure you both have experienced this. A lot of newer financial advisors, especially if they come in with any of the financial services firms that are within the Fortune 1000 or Fortune 500, should I even say, they often think that their clients will only care about their company's brand. And I think we've all witnessed that as the years go on, the economy goes on, not companies, but consumers care more about the personal brands more than and I'm no branding expert, but the personal brands rather than the company, because it's relatable and it's actually you.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
There's a saying I heard years ago. It was something along the lines of, your reputation is your currency. And speaking as someone who has hopped around from startup company to startup company, which are typically unrecognizable in terms of branding, having to lean on, well, what do I represent? Okay, forget about you've never heard of my company. Why would you want to have a conversation with me? Why would you carve out time for me? I think it's so important what you just mentioned, that regardless of where you land, your personal brand, for better or for worse, is coming with you.
Yeah. Austin, was there ever a time, maybe not now, but early on, was there ever a time that you might have experienced an imposter syndrome where you scratch your head and wondered, do I belong here right now amongst some of my more, let's use the polite word, experienced peers?
Yeah, you're telling me. Yeah. Actually, I'm laughing because of how recent one of the examples was. So I'll go through two that are really standing out, including the recent one. The first one is when I started Lead Goals Accelerator, for anybody who doesn't know, was originally Austin McCulloh Advising. I hated naming it out of ego. So we talk about imposter syndrome. But when I started that, I believe I was 23 years old. And I remember how I would put out there publicly that at a period of time, our average client age was like 34. Because I was like, look at my average client is over a decade older than me. So that would even give me peace of mind, because going through imposter syndrome, I mean, yeah, I wanted to put on this face on LinkedIn when I was making my posts that I had it all put together. But then over time, from listening to people like Alex Hormozy, have either of you listened to him?
No, no.
He's awesome. He's awesome. Okay. I could not talk him up enough. Trust me. You'll see what I mean when you listen to him or read his book. Anyways, one thing that helped though, and this actually came from Alex, is when you put in the work enough, then it gets to the point where it's like, at least with one certain topic, you don't have that imposter syndrome anymore, because you've just done the reps. It's like weightlifting, lifting weights. So that was me with prospecting. Like I've made 30,000, actually closer to 34,000 prospecting contacts. I've responded to about 12,000 one-on-one conversations with different financial advisors on LinkedIn. So it's like, I'm far from perfect. There's a lot of stuff I don't know, but when it comes to that subject, LinkedIn prospecting, I know a couple of things. And then I wasn't going to say this, but I'm big on transparency. Even this morning, I used to do a lot of podcasts about 2 years ago, but this is my first podcast in about a year and a half. So I haven't had it this morning. And I like being transparent about that, because I think a lot of people, honestly, a lot of people, they try to put on a face and put on an act. And I like the imperfection, because then it shows people that they can do it the same way too. Because there's going to be a point where people are like, gosh, I wish I could be like Austin McCulloh, like the way that I watch Mark Cuban on TV. And it's like, I'm nothing special. I just worked hard, you know?
True.
Well, Austin, if it makes you feel any better, this morning when I was talking to my partner about the conversation we're having now and saying how excited I was, forgive my dog crying in the background. We'll edit that out, Bill. I said to my partner, the best way that I could describe this person, having not ever spoken with him yet, just reading the chronology of your background and your growth, I'm like, he's like a friggin' shark. I was like, this is somebody who I would imagine seeing on Shark Tank, because he identified a problem in a niche space and threw himself into solving that problem. And therein lies your credibility. And if I can tag on to the imposter syndrome thing, I think it's interesting as I'm looking at our 3 little squares here. Without getting into too many specifics, we're probably representing maybe 2.5 to 3 different generations, right? Sitting on this podcast. And even with that carries a stigma about each of us and how we use technology, how we interact with people, what we deem appropriate in terms of transparency and conversation. And I love being at a point in life right now where I'm in my 40s, and I just recently figured out the secret is nobody knows what the heck they're doing. It's like you're waiting to get to a point where you see who the adults in charge are, and then you get to that age and you're like, oh shoot, no one has a clue. We're all just doing our best. And it really takes a lot of pressure off that feeling of, being perhaps the youngest person in the room, or perhaps the person with the fewest amount of years of experience in their belt, under their belt in the room, because I've been in that position too. And I know it's super annoying when people are like, oh my God, you're so young.
Having to prove yourself a lot. Yeah. So does realizing that most people, as in nobody, actually knows what they're doing 100% of the time, does that give you peace of mind then and give you confidence?
Yeah.
1,000,000%. Would you say, Bill? I mean, it's like, you know what you have to do. I know what I have to do. So I'm not too worried about anybody trying to one up me in my little corner.
Yeah. I think life is never a straight road. It has its curves and forks in the road. And I think, being part of any generation, sure, as you get a little older, supposedly you get a little wiser. But I think it's really about, doing your best, making the best decision in front of you at that moment in time, given the information in front of you. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That is really good.
Yeah. So, Alison, let me throw the baton at you so that you can get into Austin's DNA some more as to
Okay, I caught the baton.
There you go.
That's good.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so kind of, related to the subject of, we have to talk about it, is that you are young.
Yep.
And you are very accomplished, and you've achieved a lot of things that a lot of your peers would be maybe fearful of even taking a stab at, to be honest. You've faced a lot of risk head on.
Yep.
And you're very well spoken about your story, Austin. And that's another thing I really appreciate about hearing you start to tell it. So how do you relate to and inspire other young entrepreneurs? And what is some of the best advice that you've received along the way that you might share with, someone who's 5 years younger than you and starting their first business?
Those are both really good questions. For the first part, how to inspire others, I think it does come back down to that vulnerable piece. So on LinkedIn, I actually stopped it because I sold the business. But for about 2 months straight, I had the idea to actually post some of my sales numbers in public. And at least once per week, I would get a message from a different financial representative, not even a financial rep, just a person in sales. They'd be like, dude, I love that you're putting your numbers out there. Like, dude, I can't believe that you're actually doing that. And we live in this world where so many people just try to put on a front and lie to one another. And it's not helping anybody, because then we're further from a world of reality, because we're not actually operating from the truth. We're not operating from the facts. And everybody always talks about wanting to live in a better world, but nobody wants to do it themselves. And the best way to actually make the world a better place is just by starting with you, because you're the only person that you have true control over. So in terms of inspiring others, just showing them, that's why it's funny. I'm trying to figure out which order I want to say this. I'm somebody who I actually doubt myself a lot. And so that's why as confident as I am, I also doubt there. And I like to show people that sometimes. Like, I have a question. Can I swear?
Yeah.
Sure.
If you prefer. Anyway, I'll often joke around. Let's use a different word. I'll say I'm an idiot a lot of the time. It's not that I actually think I'm an idiot, but it's to make the other person feel comfortable. Like, for example, when I was working with younger financial advisors, like I remember a client of ours, she was 21 and I'm 26 now. She was doubting herself. And if she feels like she needs to put on this performance to be impressive to other people, they won't really buy into it, because I don't really trust the conviction. It's become skin first. And I've realized how important that is, and how that's helped me. And then Alison, sorry, what was the second half of the question? I kind of missed that part.
The second part of the question was, what is some of the best advice that you received along the way, maybe especially early in your journey, that you would share with, for instance, this 21-year-old client you're talking about?
Whenever I get that question, it comes back to just don't burn bridges. The world, as big as it is, I feel like this is why this quote is so true, is because the world is very big and there are a lot of people who don't know each other. But if you're trying to make a big impact, it gets exponentially smaller, right? Like, for example, you take common names like Mark Cuban owns the Dallas Mavericks and also owns a lot of businesses. And he probably in some way, regard, whatever, has probably met Warren Buffett, right? And You just go down the list. Names aren't popping in my mind right now, but the whole point is the world actually gets very connected at a higher level, like we all know, especially in terms of the business world, because everybody's helping one another. So I just say don't burn bridges, which is kind of tough because I'm a very blunt, honest person. It always comes from a place of care, but that doesn't always mean that's how it's received. So
Right.
not burning bridges has been very helpful for me.
Yeah. Well, and I think, just like browsing through some of your LinkedIn content, I think it comes across that you're making an effort in good faith to be honest and talk about flaws and talk about setbacks and to do that in a way that's trying to encourage people and at the same time saying it's okay to be yourself. There's, obviously we all leverage the power of social media to reach new prospective customers, to share information and education, but in the back of our minds, we have to be cognizant of the fact that what feels like a really innocuous little post that you hit post or send on, it may reach hundreds or thousands of people. And inevitably, there's probably someone who's going to get feathers ruffled or who's going to, be in disagreement or disbelief or, oh, they don't know what they're talking about or that's BS or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's important, I think, to continually strike that balance and to do so publicly, to say I'm going to share my vulnerabilities, but I'm also going to bestow my education, my knowledge on you and establish my credibility as well.
Very true. Very true.
At the end of the day, you held yourself accountable. I remember those posts. I like them.
Thank you. Well, I have to ask, the salesperson in me has to ask, what about them did you like?
I like that you had specific goals that you put some measurement on. Mm-hmm. And some of the posts, I remember some of the posts where you, pat yourself on the back because that week happened to be more active, more successful.
Yeah.
And then, the following week or weeks, you consistently shared, hey, transparently, here's what I did. It didn't meet my goal. And I like that because,
Well, it's funny, Bill, that's, we'll get into it later, but with the new business, I'm fascinated by the concept of building in public. And it's for the same reason, like I'm going to keep referencing him because I feel like he's an older brother that I've never met, this Alex Hormozy. His podcast, as he says, people like Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, they did not have, or they didn't put this all in public as they're building their companies. And so they put this playbook, and that's what he's really trying to do is just educate, because he runs a, portfolio holding company that's worth like 150 million. So he's done a couple things right in business. He's just trying to educate others. And I could talk more, but this is not a show about him, so I
won't. You've convinced me to at least check him out. I did want to ask you also, because, so this is kind of a two-parter, because obviously, there's a clear trajectory when we look at your background and where you started. And I love how you're like, I started this business at 21 and then I failed. And then I moved on and I launched another company and then I failed. And then now, the space that you're in has kind of evolved a little bit too. I mean, there's a common thread, but you're sort of providing a different service to some of the same customers. So what have you found to be, let's narrow it down to like the top 3 transferable skills from when you were in college and kind of doing like, the part-time financial advisor thing to now having sold a company and building another business, servicing those people who now you've gotten an inside look at their daily struggles?
That's a really good question. It was framed really well too. The first one that comes to my mind is, this is going to sound basic, but I'll explain why. Selling. Like, it literally doesn't matter what industry you're in, even if you're not in sales. Like, let's talk about it. So one of the software engineers that I hired, he has to be able to sell me on the mock-ups that he's putting together. So selling is a very important component. And this is something that could definitely ruffle some feathers, but and it's also probably just my age coming in and my lack of intelligence in this topic. But I feel like a lot of people overhype leadership and downplay sales, right? like I would say sales over leadership any day, not because you're trying to persuade the other person, but because to be a good salesperson, you have to know yourself so well. You have to be able to communicate to other people. You have to be able to influence other people. And so all these people talk about leadership, like posting on social media, like I want to be the subject matter expert, no pun intended. Just do the damn work and people will actually start to follow you. And it's going to take longer than you think. I mean, I've made a lot of LinkedIn posts and I still don't think my posts get a ton of traction. I think that's good feedback, quite honestly, just from a humility perspective. But sales, so I'll pause it right there. And I like sales over leadership. Another one, and this is obviously related to sales, but just being able to actually listen and to go deeper into that, like hearing the other person. I mean, you two both realize how important that is. I mean, I had this conversation with a friend recently and I go, you know, a lot of people, especially high achievers, like they just want to be listened to. They want to hear that you're like somebody's there to help them out if they need it. Right.
Yeah.
So even that is a gift to another person. Like I grew up in a family where we all gave gifts, but I don't think any of us really cared about them that much. What we cared about is spending time together as a family. And just like actually loving and caring about one another. And when you go and talk to the other person, you're not on your phone all the time, even though I've done that plenty of times and I regret it. But actually listening to the other person, and also when you listen, you pick up on what's important from other people. Like I think that's one of the most important things as an entrepreneur is just listening. Like I just finished a book that's sitting over there. It's called Backable by Sunil Gupta. He actually lived in Chicago. So have either of you heard of him?
I have
No.
Yeah.
It's literally one of the best books I've read in a long time.
Okay.
It could help with pitching a business idea. It can help with sales. You could see why when you get into it. Kind of losing my train of thought, but listening. Oh, there we go. Listening to come back to it and to finish up the point. I was saying this to a friend last night because he's working on a new business. You both know this. It's not about the money. Like the more you're obsessed with just listening and hearing the problems and the needs of the potential users, and the more you understand their problems, not just from a knowledge standpoint, but from a wisdom experience standpoint, you understand how important it is to actually solve that problem. And I wish I would have had this frame of mind earlier on in my entrepreneurial career, because the brain comes back to you, but hindsight's 2020, and all you can do is move forward with the information that you have. But for somebody who talks as much as I do, and I try to talk less now because I already know everything that's coming out of my brain, obviously, it's a skill that I wish more people were better at. So that's two skills. If you want me to add on a third, I will, but I think I touched on those pretty in depth.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Bill and I would easily agree with what you had to say. I mean, to your point earlier, sales, whether you love it or hate it, if you're going to do business, if you're going to run a business, if you're going to grow a business, if you're even just going to maintain, you have to set a goal and you have to sell your product, your services, or yourself to get there. I think for different people, that means different things. It kind of, just depends what your goal is. Like, what's the life that you want to create? What's the business that you want to build? There may be a different level of emphasis on sales depending on what success, how you define success. But couldn't agree more on that. And the listening thing as well. I think it's something we're all always working on, because listening for those triggers, those life milestones, that's extremely important to Bill and I. Looking for any indication that someone might be looking to buy or sell or refinance their home is extremely important, but also just in general, being a problem solver, being an asset, being a local expert, being able to facilitate connections between people and solutions to their problems. It's really simple.
Yeah.
But it's not easy, if that makes sense.
That's actually one of my favorite quotes. Isn't it amazing how many people don't understand that concept? And it's not because they're not, but they just like their mind is not open to it. And actually, one thing I want to plug in there is just a sense of urgency. Like actually another thing that the book Backable talks about is the game of, I think it's called the game of now versus the game of tomorrow. So it's like, I'll do it tomorrow. Actually, I go to a chiropractor, I won't say what office. And one of them actually asked me for LinkedIn marketing help. Right.
Oh, wow.
Can you help me with, and just some comments, because I've been going there for a long time.
Okay.
Can you help me with putting together my profile based on XYZ? And I told her, and she hadn't made the updates over the weekend, and she was making an excuse. And I was like, I don't care to hear the excuse. Like, just get it done, you know, now, because then you can focus on other things. So I could elaborate, but I'll hold off there.
Yeah, that's very important. Sense of urgency, especially in sales, right?
Massive.
Yeah.
Yep. You can't sleep on anything, because unfortunately, I think we're all wired to believe that our competition will be there if we're not there. Since we've been talking about solving problems and being a good active listener to identify the problems to solve, describe for us a little bit the kinds of problems that you're now solving with Reply Assist, your new business.
This one is my favorite business to build so far because it's the one that I have the most experience on. The reason why I bring that up is because like I referenced before, I've responded individually to about 12,000 one-on-one conversations. I tracked all of those. And that doesn't mean multiple times, it's different people.
Wow.
It hurts your hands to start off with. I don't think that's putting into our marketing, but literally your wrists hurt when you type that much. But to get even deeper, I'll actually, instead of going through the examples, I'll talk at a high level and break down from there. It's funny. One of my favorite entrepreneurs that I like to listen to a lot was Steve Jobs. And you know how Apple is big on think different, right? And for me, I like live different, because salespeople, they live this life where they spend so much damn time prospecting. They're on the clock all the time. That sucks. It sucks a lot. And I get it. Salespeople are typically compensated for their efforts, just like entrepreneurs are. It's a lot of front-end loaded work. But there's no reason why somebody like a financial advisor who is in the capacity to provide financial advice and be the subject matter expert in that area for other people's finances, why they have to be an extremely good salesperson. So to get back to the tactical aspect, besides the wrist hurting and whatnot, it takes a ton of time to prospect. A lot of people don't want to prospect because of the fear of rejection, right? Another one that was just standing out to me is, and this is a big one, I would say most people would agree, but knowing some financial advisors and some of the ego, some might not agree entirely, but a lot of them aren't great at prospecting. So they will go and they'll spend the time doing it. I mean, just like how I wasn't when I first started. I'm only decent at it because I've done it a ton. If they had a chatbot that actually assists them along the way, their learning curve would shorten. It saves them time, and then they can just spend that time doing whatever else that they want. So I've just seen, it's actually to finish the point. That was one of the most core aspects of the business that I actually sold. It wasn't hard because we would use the lead generation software. Bill, you know that, and we could get into that whole topic. We use the lead generation software to bring in the leads for these financial reps, but then they weren't getting a ton of meetings set years ago. Right? They had all these leads. It's like from, I think the movie's called Glengarry Ross. I've never seen it all.
Yep.
Long story short, during the clip.
Oh my God, you need to watch it.
I need to watch it all. Actually, it's one of my favorites, so much so that in the old Google Chrome browser that I use a new one as I sold the business because I didn't want to have all the clutter. I went to a folder, as my miscellaneous folder. No, it was sales. And I would click down, and it was the clip of when he's in the office with those 2 or 3 salesmen. And one of the guys goes, he's like, the leads are shit. And he's like, the leads aren't shit. You are shit, right? So I was like, that's not even what he was saying verbatim. But the whole point is the salesperson was saying that the leads were not good. And the sales trainer said, no, the leads are just fine. You aren't good. You are not good enough asking questions, being focused on others. So long story short, that's a huge component as well. And our clients were going through that issue so much that our clients would take a screenshot of their LinkedIn conversations and send it to our team so we would assist them with what to say back. One of our clients, so that literally was a problem. I can come back to that. But one of our clients, she actually coined the term because she would say like assist reply or reply assist. She would say that all the time. Instead of saying, hey, Austin, I want your help respond to this message. It was just a quick couple of words that she could say. So I was actually going to call the business something else. I was like, reply assist. It's pretty straightforward. It's not the sexiest name, but it gets the point across. And so that's how the idea actually came about, is because it was something that our clients were wanting. So.
That really illustrates the point, Austin, about, or it it emphasizes the point of how many people are just freaking stone cold terrified about talking to new prospects. Not because they don't know their stuff and they're worried that they're not going to give quality information. It's just because, you know, we're using two different sides of our brain to do these different functions. There's, you know, all that data and expert knowledge that doesn't always correlate with social skills and awareness and good conversational skills and being personable and breaking down barriers. So it's so interesting that I know it's not simple what you're doing, but you described it in a simple way of like, not only are we going to serve you up this lead on a silver platter, we're going to help you with the first couple of steps towards converting that lead into an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So simple.
Well, and it's, I want to plug in one other thing too, and you summarized that really well. So thank you, Alison. I actually asked one of our clients, I said, in terms of, because we had already talked about me working on the chatbot because I'd been working on this for a period of time. And I said, why would you want this? So this goes back to the whole listening part. And he goes, not only would it be helpful to have the chatbot actually be able to respond to your DMs or draft a response for us to edit and then send their different iterations to it. Because it'd also be awesome if it could do the follow-up task for you. And I was like, damn, that's a really, really good point, because follow-ups suck, let's be completely honest, but the follow-ups make a huge difference because that's where the real report is getting built. And there are a lot of people, I would say from my experience, 95, maybe not, let's call it 90% of people are actually fine with you following up, and you can build decent rapport. Doesn't mean they'll ever become a client or work with you, but they won't be completely opposed. It's not everybody who's saying, you know, leave me alone. That's the 10%. If not, that's why I said 95 and then 5% on the opposite side. But simply from asking him and then listening to what he had to say, that is probably going to be one of the most core pieces of the actual software, is just automating that follow-up, because that's another thing that we'd get complaints about a lot from clients, which are very legitimate complaints, you know?
Yeah. The fortune is in the follow-up.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is. And as we're talking about it, I'm thinking about how often the wheels have come off for me by letting those follow-up tasks just kind of pile into a mountain, and then it feels insurmountable, and, you know, it's a whole negative cascading effect. But just develop a program for realtors and then come back and I'll beta test it for you.
It's something I don't think we've described it, and I'm not going to get all pitchy. I hate when people do that. But I actually would love for this tool to be for all salespeople. But for anybody who knows anything about artificial intelligence, you need to train it for a very specific use case. Otherwise, it won't gain any traction, right? So it's not that I'm super passionate about developing this for financial advisors. It's just, I believe that is the only way to get this at a huge scale, because what we will do, it's funny when going through the examples, when explaining this to people, I say, I don't eventually want it to just be for financial advisors. I want it to be for realtors, for small business owners, et cetera. But the objections you face are not the same as what a financial advisor gets. The way that you answer questions is not the same. Your compliance is different. So long story short, I would love to be at that point, but baby steps.
Okay, but we'll keep our eyes on you, and we will anxiously await the iteration for realtors and lenders.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, all businesses start with how well you develop that relationship. So you're spot on. So one last point here for all of you watching, for all of you who know Austin, and my suspicion is many of you probably know Austin, but maybe there's a segment of you who may not know Austin well enough. As you watch this segment of our live stream, here is his new business. Go check it out. He's got a very interesting set of stories, even on this landing page, as to what problem he's solving for you, financial advisors. And as he's kind of hinted so far, maybe this reply assist solution is going to impact multiple industries. We look forward to that.
I do too.
All right. So as we wrap up today, Austin, thank you for sharing your time with Alison and myself. We will keep our pulse on you in this next part of your journey. So, Alison, anything more you want to add?
Just to say thanks for your time, Austin. Your story is really interesting. I think I don't want to sound like an old mom type when I say this, but I do think that you're setting a great example for other young entrepreneurs. And I wish I had a fraction of your poise and composure when I was in my early 20s, because it really shines through. I can tell you're used to dealing with, executive level folks. So wishing you the best. And it's going to be exciting to see where you go from here.
Thank you both. I appreciate you both a lot.
You're welcome. So thank you everyone who's tuned in for today's episode of Leave It to the Experts, whether you've watched this live or on demand. So until we all see each other again in the future, Alison, we'll see each other in the next episode. Talk later.
We sure will.
Thank you.
Thanks.